My friends, debt is not simply about money. Debt is a weight. It is a silent chain that ties your future to your past, keeping you bound when you were created to soar. It is not just financial. It is emotional, mental, and spiritual. And tonight, I want to remind you that you were not born to live in bondage. You were born to live free. I have walked through villages where men and women had almost nothing, yet their faces were lit with joy because they carried no debt. And I have stood in cities where people lived in mansions but could not sleep at night because their lives were mortgaged to the future. True freedom is not the size of your house. It is the peace in your soul. Let me tell you the story of a young teacher I once met. She was drowning in student loans, credit card bills, and daily worry. Every paycheck she earned was already spoken for before it reached her hands. One day, she made a decision. I will no longer be a slave to debt. She cut back her lifestyle. She took on extra work. She disciplined herself. For years, she fought quietly, step by step. And today she is debt-free, teaching children not only how to read books, but how to read life. Ordinary people doing extraordinary things simply because they refuse to surrender. Debt is conquered not by wishing, but by discipline. It requires vision. You must see beyond today. You must tell yourself, I am not what I owe. I am more than these numbers on a page. Each time you choose responsibility over impulse, each time you say no to what you cannot afford, you are declaring independence from bondage. Nations rise and fall by how they manage their debts. Families are strengthened or weakened by how they steward their resources. You too are a nation within yourself. And just as a wise leader plans for tomorrow, so must you lead your own life. Debt is not eliminated in a day, but every day you take a step closer to freedom. You see, perseverance is the currency of change. The power to eliminate debt is not in the bank. It is in your decisions. Change requires sacrifice. But sacrifice today is the seed of liberty tomorrow. If you want to be free, you must be willing to live differently, think differently, and believe differently. And let me say this, hope is stronger than debt. You are not defined by the mistakes of your past, but by the choices you make today. Debt may have followed you into this room, but it does not have to leave with you. The chains can break, the future can be rewritten, and freedom can be your portion. So I call you, rise above the fear, take responsibility, discipline your spending, guard your heart against the trap of comparison, walk in perseverance, and believe in a future where you owe no man anything but love. Because the greatest wealth is not in what you own, but in who you become. And when you free yourself from debt, you free your mind to dream again. You free your heart to give again. And you free your life to live again. My friends, you were created to be the head and not the tail, above and not beneath, a lender and not a borrower. The world is waiting for your freedom. So go, begin today. Take the first step, break the chains, and walk into the life of liberty that was waiting for you all along. When we think of debt, most people picture numbers on a statement, balances on a credit card, or a loan contract signed at the bank. But I want you to look deeper. Debt is not just financial. It is emotional, psychological, and even spiritual. It is not just what you owe to a lender. It is the weight that rests on your shoulders, the anxiety that follows you into the night, the silent voice that whispers every time you want to dream bigger. You can't because you still owe. Debt is a chain, and a chain has one purpose: to restrict movement, to keep you from going where you want to go, to keep you tied to yesterday, even when your heart is ready for tomorrow. Many people wake up every morning with dreams in their spirit, visions in their mind, and a burning desire to make something new of their lives. Yet, before they can even take their first step, the chain of debt yanks them back and reminds them that they are not free. Think of a bird. A bird was created to fly, to rise on the wind and soar above valleys and mountains. But if that bird is tied to a string, even though it has wings, it cannot fly. Debt is that string. It holds down men and women who were born to rise. It convinces them that their dreams must wait until their bills are paid, until their loans are cleared, until their obligations are finished. And some people live their entire lives never flying because the chain of debt kept them grounded. But I want you to imagine with me, what would your life look like without that chain? What would you attempt if you had no debt hanging over your head? Would you start a business? Would you give more generously to those in need? Would you travel to see the world? Or invest in your children's education with joy instead of worry? You see, debt is not just about money, it is about stolen possibilities. It is the silent thief of your future. I once met a man who worked 2 jobs just to keep up with his debts. His life was a cycle: work, pay bills, borrow again, repeat. One day in frustration, he told me, "Dr. Munroe, I feel like I'm running on a treadmill. I am moving, sweating, Working hard, but I am not going anywhere. That is what debt does. It gives you motion without progress. It keeps your legs moving but denies you advancement. And this is why we must confront it, not just as a financial problem, but as a matter of destiny. Debt has a way of controlling decisions. People choose jobs they hate because they need the paycheck to pay off loans. Families stay in unhealthy environments because they feel chained by financial obligations. Dreams are postponed, not because of lack of ability, but because of lack of financial freedom. The truth is, debt is not just a number, it is a master, and when you are in debt, you are not truly free. The greatest tragedy is not owing money, it is losing vision. Debt clouds the future. It makes people so focused on surviving today that they forget to plan for tomorrow. It takes their eyes off the horizon and fixes them on the ground beneath their feet. And when you cannot see ahead, you begin to live small. But you were not created to live small. You were created to live with vision, to walk with confidence, and to embrace the fullness of life. Now, I am not saying that all debt is evil. There are times when borrowing is necessary, times when it is strategic. But there is a difference between debt that is controlled and debt that controls you. One is a tool, the other is a chain. When you hold the tool, you build with it. But when the chain holds you, it binds you. The key is to recognize the difference and to refuse to let debt dictate your life. So I say to you today, open your eyes. Stop looking at debt only as numbers and start recognizing its true nature. Every dollar owed is a piece of your future promised away. Every unnecessary debt is a weight you choose to carry on your journey. And every chain, no matter how small, has the power to limit your movement. You must see debt for what it is, a restriction, a bondage, a shackle that keeps you from living fully. And when you see it clearly, you will treat it with the seriousness it deserves. You will no longer make excuses, no longer live in denial, no longer allow yourself to be deceived into thinking that you can serve both your vision and your debt at the same time. One will rule and the other will serve. Debt is not just about numbers, it is about freedom, destiny, and the life you were meant to live. One of the greatest battles a human being will ever fight is not on a battlefield with guns, nor in a court with arguments, but in the quiet moments when no one is watching, the battle between discipline and desire. Desire says, I want it now. Discipline says, not yet, wait. Desire whispers, you deserve it. Discipline answers, you cannot afford it. And the truth is, the outcome of this invisible battle will decide whether you remain in debt or walk in freedom. Debt, at its root, often grows out of uncontrolled desire. The desire for more than you need, sooner than you should have it, and faster than you can pay for it. Advertisements, culture, and even peer pressure feed this desire daily. You see it when the neighbor buys a new car, and suddenly your old car feels like a burden. You see it when a new phone is released, and the one in your pocket seems outdated. You see it in the endless cycle of wanting bigger houses, better clothes, fancier vacations. None of these things are evil in themselves, but when desire rules, they become traps. Discipline, on the other hand, is the guard of your future. It is the invisible strength that says no to today so you can say yes to tomorrow. Discipline is when you walk past the store window and remind yourself, I don't need that right now. It is when you eat at home instead of dining out 3 times a week. It is when you save instead of spend, when you work overtime instead of wasting time, when you choose patience over impulse. Discipline is the proof that you are serious about freedom. Consider the farmer. A farmer has seed in his hand. He could grind it into flour, bake it into bread, and eat it all today. That is desire speaking. But if he does that, tomorrow he has nothing. Discipline tells him, put the seed in the ground. Wait, let it grow. It requires patience, sacrifice, and sometimes hunger. But in time, that one seed becomes a field of harvest. This is the principle of life. If you consume everything today, you rob your tomorrow. Debt is often the result of consuming tomorrow's harvest today. Discipline is the courage to wait for the right season. I remember a young man who came to me buried in debt. He had a good job, yet he could not keep up with his expenses. He told me, Dr. Munroe, every time I get money, I feel like I need to buy something. It's like the money burns a hole in my pocket. I told him, your problem is not money, it is discipline. Money is neutral, it will go wherever you send it. Without discipline, money will always leave you. That young man learned to budget, to control his spending, to silence the voice of desire. Over time, he paid off his debts. Not because he earned more, but because he mastered himself. You see, the richest person in the world is not the one with the most money, but the one with the most discipline. Because discipline protects what money cannot. Discipline allows you to say no to the unnecessary, to focus on what matters, and to build steadily toward freedom. Desire screams for attention, but discipline quietly secures your destiny. We live in a world where immediate gratification has become normal. We can order food in minutes, stream movies instantly, buy goods online with one click. Convenience has become our expectation, but life is not built on convenience. It is built on principle, and the principle is clear. If you live by desire alone, you will end up in debt. If you live by discipline, you will build wealth, peace, and freedom. Discipline is not glamorous. It does not make headlines. No one celebrates the person who stays home and cooks instead of going out. No one claps for the man who drives the same car for 10 years while paying off his debts. No one applauds the woman who wears last season's clothes because she refuses to live above her means. But in silence, these people are winning the war. They are choosing freedom over fashion, destiny over debt, and future over fleeting pleasure. Every time you say no to an impulse, you are saying yes to your future. Every time you deny desire, you strengthen the muscle of discipline. And discipline, like a muscle, grows stronger the more you use it. What begins as difficult soon becomes natural. The same self-control that helps you manage your finances will help you manage your health, your time, your relationships. Discipline in one area builds discipline in every area. So understand this: debt does not have to own you, but discipline must. For when discipline governs your life, desire takes its proper place. Desire is meant to inspire you, but discipline is meant to lead you. Without discipline, desire will destroy you. With discipline, desire will push you to achieve greater things at the right time, in the right way, without bondage and without regret. When we talk about eliminating debt, it is easy to believe that the task is reserved for the wealthy, the privileged, or those born into opportunity. Many people think, if I had more money, I could pay off my debts. If I had a better job, I could be free. If I had a different start in life, I would not be where I am today. But I want to challenge that thinking. The truth is, extraordinary outcomes often come from very ordinary people who made courageous decisions with the little they had. Debt does not discriminate. It affects teachers, laborers, doctors, single parents, entrepreneurs, and families. It has no respect for profession, race, or social status. But here is the good news: freedom also does not discriminate. Anyone, no matter where they start, can climb out of debt if they are willing to persevere and embrace change. I think of a young single mother I met. She worked at a small office job, barely earning enough to provide for her 2 children. Her credit cards were maxed out. Her student loans weighed heavily on her, and each month she felt like she was drowning. People told her, "There's no way out. You will always live like this." But she refused to surrender. She created a budget. She cut unnecessary expenses, and she picked up a part-time job in the evenings. For years, she sacrificed comforts others took for granted, but she paid off every single debt. Today, she owns her home, provides for her children without anxiety, and has become an example to the very community that once pitied her. She was not a celebrity. She was not wealthy. She was simply determined. Another story is of a young man who came from a poor background. He dreamed of starting a small business, but debt from loans and reckless spending tied him down. He decided that if he was going to build anything worthwhile, he had to free himself. He worked tirelessly, sometimes taking jobs others rejected. He disciplined himself to live on less than he earned. Slowly, painfully, he chipped away at his debt. Years later, he not only became debt-free, but used his hard-earned savings to launch a thriving business. Today, he employs others, creating opportunities for people who once stood where he stood. His extraordinary impact began with very ordinary steps. Stories like these remind us that the difference between bondage and freedom is not brilliance, it is perseverance. Ordinary people are capable of extraordinary results when they decide that debt will not define them. The truth is, the journey is never glamorous. It does not begin with applause. It does not attract attention. It begins in quiet moments. Choosing to cook at home instead of dining out. Choosing to drive an old car instead of taking on a loan for a new one. Choosing to save even when it feels like saving so little makes no difference. Small steps taken consistently create great change. The power of perseverance is that it multiplies over time. At first, progress may feel invisible. The debt still looks overwhelming. The sacrifices still feel heavy. But each payment, each act of discipline, each wise choice adds up. And then one day, the chain that seemed unbreakable begins to weaken. That is the extraordinary power hidden in ordinary persistence. Too many people give up because the mountain of debt looks too high. But mountains are moved not by leaps, but by steps. Every step forward, no matter how small, is progress. And those who keep stepping eventually reach the summit. This is why perseverance is more powerful than circumstance. You may not control the size of your paycheck, but you can control your habits. You may not erase debt in a day, but you can take a step today. And when ordinary people take enough steps in the right direction, extraordinary things happen. Consider also the influence of example. When one person in a family decides to break free from debt, the entire household is changed. Children grow up learning responsibility. Spouses gain peace instead of arguments. Communities are inspired by the witness of someone who refused to remain a slave to debt. Ordinary people, in breaking their chains, open the way for others to do the same. The extraordinary is not about perfection, it is about persistence. It is not about having the best opportunities, it is about maximizing the opportunities you already have. It is not about waiting for a miracle, it is about living like you believe one is possible through your daily actions. The men and women who rise above debt are not those who had the most favorable circumstances, but those who refused to quit when circumstances were against them. So remember, the extraordinary is not out of reach. It is not reserved for the few, the privileged, or the wealthy. It is hidden in the small, disciplined steps of everyday people who believe that freedom is worth the sacrifice, worth the effort, and worth the perseverance. When we hear the word leadership, most people think of presidents, prime ministers, CEOs, or generals commanding armies. But the greatest and most difficult form of leadership is not leading a nation, a company, or an organization. It is leading yourself. Self-leadership is the foundation of every other form of leadership, and nowhere is this more evident than in the area of managing debt and finances. A nation can collapse under the weight of mismanaged debt. We have seen governments fall, economies break, and societies crumble because leaders refuse to make wise financial decisions. But the same principle applies at the personal level. A person who refuses to lead their own life wisely will collapse under the burden of personal debt. Leadership of self means taking responsibility for your financial choices, owning your mistakes, and guiding your life in a direction that secures freedom instead of bondage. The first task of a leader is vision. Leaders see what others do not see. In your own life, you must have a vision that is bigger than your present circumstances. If your vision is only to survive, then you will always make survival decisions, quick fixes, shortcuts, and desperate borrowing. But if your vision is to be free, to build wealth, to live without chains, then your decisions will align with that vision. A man or woman with vision will endure discomfort today for the promise of tomorrow. Leadership of your own life begins with asking, where am I going? What do I want my future to look like? Without vision, you drift. With vision, you lead. The second task of a leader is discipline. Leadership is not simply about inspiration, it is about control. A great leader does not allow emotions, impulses, or popularity to dictate decisions. They act according to principle. In your life, this means controlling your spending, refusing unnecessary debt, and holding yourself accountable when no one else is watching. Self-leadership requires the strength to say no to yourself. This is the hardest form of leadership because it is easier to command others than to control your own desires. Yet true freedom comes only when you lead yourself with discipline. The third task of a leader is accountability. No leader operates in isolation. They surround themselves with advisors, systems, and checks to ensure that their decisions are wise and effective. Likewise, in your personal life, you must create accountability. A budget is accountability. A savings plan is accountability. Sometimes a trusted friend, spouse, or mentor can provide accountability, reminding you of your goals when you are tempted to drift. Self-leadership does not mean walking alone. It means making sure that your life is guided by principles and that you are answerable to them. I once counseled a man who was a manager in a large company. He commanded a team of 50 employees, but his personal finances were in chaos. He told others what to do each day, but he could not tell himself what to do with his money. He was respected in the workplace, but lived in constant fear of creditors. His problem was not income, it was leadership of self. Until he learned to govern his own spending and take responsibility for his financial decisions, he could not escape his chains. Leadership begins not with position, but with personal responsibility. When you lead your life wisely, you create stability not just for yourself, but for those connected to you. A father who leads his finances well blesses his children with security. A mother who governs her household spending creates peace in the home. An individual who chooses financial discipline becomes a pillar in their community, showing others what is possible. Self-leadership has ripple effects far beyond the individual. Another key element of leadership is courage. Leaders often have to make unpopular decisions. They must sometimes go against the crowd, resist pressure, and stand alone for what is right. In your own financial journey, you may face similar pressures. Friends may laugh at you for driving an old car. Family may question why you don't spend more lavishly. Colleagues may mock you for saying no to certain luxuries, but a leader does not bow to popularity, they remain faithful to the vision. Courage in leadership means having the strength to prioritize freedom over appearances, substance over image, and destiny over desire. Leadership also requires wisdom. Wisdom is not simply knowledge, it is applied understanding. It is knowing what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. In your finances, wisdom means learning how money works, studying the principles of saving, investing, and giving. It means educating yourself rather than remaining ignorant. Leaders are learners, and if you are to lead your own life, you must become a student of financial principles. Ignorance is costly, but wisdom pays dividends. Finally, leadership of your own life means stewardship. Leaders understand that what they have is not only for themselves, but for the people and purposes they serve. In the same way, your finances are not just for your comfort, they are trust. They are resources given to you to manage for the benefit of your family, your community, and your future. Stewardship means using money as a servant, not allowing it to master you. It means directing resources toward vision, not letting them drift aimlessly into desire. When you step into self-leadership, you stop waiting for someone else to fix your life. You stop blaming the economy, your job, or your background. You recognize that while you cannot control everything, you can control yourself. And when you control yourself, you lead yourself. And when you lead yourself, you create the path to freedom. Debt has a way of convincing people that their lives are over before they have even begun. It whispers in the night that the mistakes of yesterday have written the story of tomorrow. It tells you that because you borrowed, because you stumbled, because you mismanaged, you will always be bound. But there is a truth more powerful than any balance sheet. As long as you are breathing, your story is not finished. Hope is stronger than debt, and responsibility is the tool that turns hope into freedom. Hope is not wishful thinking. Hope is vision anchored in possibility. It is the belief that tomorrow can be better than today, and that you have a role in shaping that tomorrow. Without hope, people surrender. They stop trying, they stop fighting, they accept the chain as permanent. But with hope, the smallest action becomes meaningful. With hope, every payment, every sacrifice, every wise choice feels like a step forward because you know you are walking towards something greater. I once met a man who was overwhelmed by debt. He told me, "I don't see the point in even trying. I'll be paying for the rest of my life." He had lost his hope. And when hope is gone, motivation dies. But then he saw another man in his community, someone with less income than he had, paying off debt piece by piece with persistence. That example reignited his hope. He realized that the chains were not unbreakable. Slowly, he took responsibility, and slowly his life changed. His freedom began not with money, but with hope. Responsibility is what gives hope substance. Hope says, it can be done. Responsibility says, I will do it. Responsibility refuses to wait for a miracle while wasting today's opportunities. It is the decision to own your part in the problem and to act on your part in the solution. Many people blame circumstances, employers, or governments for their financial struggles. But the moment you shift blame, you also surrender power. Responsibility puts the power back in your hands. It says, I may not control everything, but I can control me. I can control my choices, my spending, my discipline, my priorities. Debt cannot be defeated by hope alone. A man can sit in his room dreaming of freedom, but until he takes responsibility, writing down his debts, creating a plan, cutting expenses, making payments, he remains in chains. Hope is the light in the distance. Responsibility is the path you walk to reach it. Together they create freedom. Think of a sailor lost at sea. Hope is the star in the sky reminding him that land is out there. But responsibility is adjusting the sails, steering the rudder, and rowing when the wind dies down. Without hope, he gives up and drifts. Without responsibility, he has direction but no movement. But with both, he moves steadily towards safety. This is the power of hope and responsibility working together. Another story comes to mind of a woman who lived many years enslaved to credit card debt. Every month she prayed for a miracle, but the bills only grew. One day she realized that praying without acting was not faith. It was denial. She decided to take responsibility. She cut up her cards, created a strict plan, and worked tirelessly. Hope gave her the strength to start. Responsibility gave her the discipline to continue. Today she lives free, not because her circumstances suddenly changed, but because her mindset did. Hope also creates resilience. The journey to eliminating debt is not a straight line. There are setbacks, unexpected expenses, emergencies, disappointments. Without hope, those setbacks feel like the end. But with hope, they become delays, not defeats. Hope reminds you that failure is not final unless you quit, and responsibility ensures you do not quit because you are committed to the process. When people combine hope with responsibility, their perspective shifts. They no longer see debt as a life sentence, but as a temporary condition. They no longer see themselves as victims, but as stewards of their destiny. This shift is powerful because how you see yourself determines how you act. If you see yourself as hopeless, you will live passively. If you see yourself responsible, you will live actively. And active living creates change. Hope gives you energy. Responsibility gives you direction. Hope fuels your spirit. Responsibility structures your steps. Together they build a bridge from bondage to freedom. And the freedom that is born from hope and responsibility is not just financial. It is emotional, mental, and generational. It breaks the cycle of fear, teaches children a new way, and opens doors to possibilities that debt once locked away. My friends, we have walked together through the journey of understanding debt. Not just as numbers on a page, but as chains that bind the future. We have seen that discipline must rise above desire, that perseverance in ordinary people produces extraordinary results, that true leadership begins with leading yourself, and that hope combined with responsibility is the birthplace of freedom. The message is simple but powerful. Debt does not define you, and it does not own you. You have the power to choose differently, to live responsibly, to persevere, and to walk into freedom one step at a time. The same way nations rise through wise stewardship, you too can rise by mastering the leadership of your own life. You were not created to be a slave to debt. You were created to live free, to dream boldly, and to give generously. Every decision you make today is shaping the life you will live tomorrow. Freedom is not reserved for the wealthy or the privileged. It is for anyone who dares to hope and accepts responsibility for change. So I say to you, take the first step, break the cycle. Rewrite your story. Let your life be a testimony that chains can be broken, that debt can be eliminated, and that an ordinary person with vision and discipline can create an extraordinary future. Because the greatest wealth you will ever hold is not in what you possess, but in who you become when you live free.